What is up, and welcome to episode 77 of Pull Up with Myles and Owen. Today, we're excited to share this convo with you. We had a very dear friend of the podcast on the show, Natalie Esquire. We got into a whole bunch of stuff. We talk collective bargaining agreement takeaways, how that was covered in the media, predictions, bold predictions for the upcoming WNBA season, and just a lot of cool reflective stuff on Natalie's journey into this space and the work that she's done for NBC Sports. So let's jump right into it. What is up, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of Pull Up with Myles and Owen. And today we have a dear friend of the pod joining the show for the first time, long overdue, Natalie Esquire. She covers women's basketball for NBC Sports, an award-winning journalist, also a lawyer, just so many credentials. I could go on and on. Natalie, thank you so much for joining us. How's it going?
Thank you. It's my pleasure. I'm so happy to be here and I am pumped. Let's go.
We're so happy to have you, and this is such a great time to have you too, because we're going to tap into your experience as a lawyer as well, because we're going to talk some CBA today. Let me just set the stage real quick, because barring anything wild and unforeseen between this recording and our publication, the WNBA is on track to have a fully completed CBA and a full 30th season. So, Natalie, before we dive into the details a little bit, could you just take us through your journey and how you got into women's sports?
Oh, my goodness, it's so untraditional. As Owen mentioned, I practiced law. And for a number of years, but I didn't always practice law, but I always worked in the legal industry. So sometimes I was on the business side, like I did legal tech and a variety of other things, consulting, but always still in the legal industry. But I was trying to work my way into sports, and I didn't know exactly how to do that. So I tried the traditional way of just applying for jobs, on the back end, because I had done some product management. And so I thought, I could get into a league and do that. But, I did get informational interviews or first round interviews, but they couldn't get past me being a lawyer. People really get stuck on that. Or just in general, I guess some of the roles were pretty junior. And so they were concerned about the pay, they couldn't pay me. And so, eventually, at the encouraging and support of friends and family, sort of my support system, it was maybe you just need to do your own thing. Maybe you can't go the traditional route. And so I had been on Twitter, which I joined just so I could be around other crazy people like me that talking basketball, because my friends would be I'd be sending them stuff all the time and they'd be like, Natalie, okay, enough. We don't care about this. And so I joined Twitter with the other crazies, and eventually, even my followers, they'd be start a pod. And once I got past my own fears and insecurities, people don't want to hear me talk about basketball. Once I embraced that was really what I was supposed to be doing, I started my own podcast. I developed a lot of media relationships, and so by doing that, I had people from the media who would come on and also in ways endorse me and support me. And eventually it led to an NBC show, Brother from Another, that was Mike Smith's show, asking me to be a guest on the show, and that went really well. And so then I became a contributor for NBC Sports. And when the producer for that show left, I inquired, and Mike was like, hell yeah, I want to work with you, which was amazing. And then from there, it was just everything took off, So Odyssey picked up my podcast, and it just, everything, once I finally committed to it, everything took off. And so, yeah. And then here I am now, almost 4 years later at NBC.
How would you say that your experience as an employment lawyer, because we talked about this in our group chat, day after day during these negotiations, kind of being on the same page from a labor negotiation perspective, but obviously I'm someone who doesn't have that immense experience in the field of law. How did that inform your coverage of these CBA negotiations and just the way you consumed everything that was coming at us from a media perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was very helpful, not only for the CBA, but in general when legal matters come up, like, like when the Aces had the investigations, for example, things like that. There is actually really a distinction between labor and employment law, and I was definitely more an employment lawyer, but you kind of can't do employment law without having some level of understanding of labor law. But the people who do labor law are truly like specialists, and even some of the like labor relations people who are not lawyers have much more expertise than me. But just in terms of some of the things that they were bargaining for, some of the tactics that were use in the negotiations by the parties, a lot of that stuff, it were things that I've seen before and I recognize, so they didn't surprise me. When there started to be all of these leaks about maybe that the players union was fractured and everybody's not on the same page. I talked about that months ago with our friend Terika Foster Brasby, and I was just like, look, the most important thing about these negotiations is like there's going to become a time. There are going to be some players that like, they're going to want to look out for themselves, or, there are going to be people who want to like suggest or try to fracture their relationship, because once everyone is like not on the same page, or people are like thinking about themselves and not collectively, right, then it's easier to not get the strongest CBA that you want. And so it was really important that they not let that happen. And like Nneka said in one of her interviews, like people tried but it didn't work, and I agree with that. I'm really proud of the players for staying strong and holding out and getting to a collective bargaining agreement that they can feel good about. And I think that many fans can support as well.
I think that so often people will say, like, for a negotiation, for a resolution to come together, both sides need to walk away feeling like they've lost something. And I just hate that framing so much. I think like this is a case where both sides are walking away and saying, we're happy and we've won something. And obviously you're compromising, and that's so much of it. But when you look at what we know, because we're still getting more and more information every day, what is the most monumental, significant part of this CBA in regards to truly moving the WNBA as a league and that trajectory forward in the context of where this is among other North American sports?
Yeah, it's so fascinating because it is a monumental landmark CBA. So I don't want to take away from that. But when you think about some of the things that they had to bargain for to get, it's like this is stuff they should have already had, right? And so I think to me what was most surprising is that they didn't really have to lose the housing. I thought that the league was going to maybe try to make them choose between the revenue and the housing. I didn't think they'd get them to do both, but they did. And I think that that's great, and tremendous. The other stuff that they got, and they got a lot, even the retired players, that to me is so notable. We just talked with Diana Taurasi, and, she's joking, but she was just like, yeah, thank you. This paycheck's going to pay for her daughter's college, because I mean, she meets that tier that I think is 12 plus years. So she would get like the 100K. Look, even if you're Diana Taurasi, 100K, like that's notable. Right. And so things like that, the needing a player's consent, if they're pregnant, to be traded. I mean, there's lots of other things that I don't think were going to be hard things for the league and the owners to agree to, but that they actually got all of those other things that they did is notable. But usually when there's key issues, a big ask, we knew revenue was one and we knew housing was one, that could have been something the league may have like really fought against. And I don't know that all the players were all aligned with the housing, because I remember Sophie Cunningham on her podcast kind of thought that was something that they could compromise or give on, so that they were able to still get that through, along with getting the revenue share to 20%. And I don't know what their bottom line was. Like, I would love to know that, because like we know they started at a number, but I want to know what the real number for them was, in terms of like, we just can't accept lower than this. And if it was 20, then they got 20. I know behind the scenes, many of us would talk, and I always thought that it should not be any less than 20. So I thought that was really notable.
I also think, just to add to that, there's some stuff that half existed and needed to be ratified in the new CBA, like the charter flights. That's been such a conversation for the last few years, and I think that was so much of the 2020 CBA. When you just talk about the quality of life for these players, when before that, lots of them were sharing hotel rooms, or they were just not getting any of these no requirements for what they needed for a training staff or for a facility. And that's been written in and expanded in this CBA too. And there's just so much talk about like, what's the dollar amount? And that to me doesn't need to be the be all and end all.
Agreed. We just spent like on Monday, I think, or Tuesday, whatever day it was, Tarika and I, like just breaking down like some of the things that they got that like had nothing to do with money. And it's like, they really thought of everything, and they got a lot.
They got a lot, including free league pass, which really, really huge. The major sticking point for everyone, clearly. We talk a lot, and one of the reasons we wanted to have you on, because again, it's another thing that we discuss offline all the time, is the way in which media covered these negotiations. I'm curious if there were things you thought that certain segments of women's basketball media did well in covering these negotiations, if there were certain frustrations in how things were framed, because I know, like, personally, I had many frustrations with how people were talking about what was going on, but there was also a lot of good reporting happening on the ground too. What were your takeaways from the way media covered the last handful of months?
For sure. I mean, I always have frustrations with how the media covers this league. So let's be very clear about that. But that being said, yeah, there was some incredible reporting. I thought, the media who were on site and, sort of camped out there, I do not envy them. Like, reporting is not a path that I've ever have chosen in this space. And to be out there, the hours that they did, and not know if they were going to get a sound bite, if they were going to get anything, I think in the early days, they weren't even inside. I think eventually they were like let in, and you saw the players afterwards thanking them and expressing their gratitude. And so I do think that's notable. But I also want to make sure that people realize, like, there were a number of media like covering this, even if they weren't there on the ground, talking about it, reporting on it, writing about it. And so from that perspective, I thought it was really good. I do think sometimes, and I think this is human nature. I thought sometimes when I saw reporting, or not really reporting, but just analysis, if you will, where people were sort of saying like the players just sort of need to accept it, or they were like asking for too much or sort of encouraging them to settle. I don't think that's really our place to say, or I guess it depends on like what your role is. I am someone who often gives my opinion. But I was seeing that from some people who I don't generally think give their opinion in writing, but also I feel like some of that may have been, and I don't know, so obviously this is me speculating a little bit, but I think it's our human nature, right? Because some people's jobs are really reliant on there being a season and it's starting on time and, those kinds of things. And so maybe some of that may have been clouding, their analysis or judgment a little bit in the opinions that they offered. And so I didn't really like that, because I wonder, like, when you're doing your own negotiating for your own job and your salary, do you want someone telling you that, you're asking for too much? Like, why? Like, they haven't gotten this for years. And so why is it too much? And so I didn't love that. And then I think the other thing to me that also stuck out was after the letter was written by Kelsey Plum and Breanna Stewart. I understand who Breanna Stewart is in this league and Kelsey Plum, and obviously they're star players, but I think in general with athletes, we have a human nature to like put them on a pedestal. And because Breanna Stewart is a star, she's still human. It does not mean that she's not flawed. And you can be a star on the court, but that doesn't mean that you are a star in business. That being said, I do think she's great in business. Obviously, she built, she's one of the co-founders of Unrivaled. But I agree with Lexi Brown in that I thought the approach was a little flawed. While I don't think that they expected the letter to be leaked or that they leaked it, I still just don't know that a letter was necessary. Just like I don't think a letter from the agents was necessary. Like, who are you to ask for more information? You have no standing in this. You have clients. And so your clients can tell you what's happening, but like the union has no obligation to you. And so for sure, Kelsey and Brianna and whatever players they were speaking for, their feelings are valid. Absolutely 100%. But I think like that probably could have just been expressed to Terry and union leadership and whoever else in a conversation without it being written. Because once you put pen to paper, you always risk there being leaks. I mean, you risk leaks when there's verbal commentary, and there had already been leaks to that point. So I just think the process was a little flawed, not an issue with the fact that they had concerns. And I think those were the only two things, because I felt like the approach once that letter came out was that they are right, or obviously there's something wrong if they say it. And I'm just like, okay, but like, why are we just all of a sudden now questioning Terry and NECA and all of these people? So I just feel like it created a conversation that was unnecessary and was distracting from the main goal of what the players were trying to do.
I think that a difficulty whenever there's something that is happening completely behind closed doors is that everyone's going to be grasping at whatever breadcrumbs they can get and then analyzing that to death. And it's a sign of a healthy union that they're not a monolith, that they do have conversations and that they do evolve. And yeah, I mean, I remember we were all talking at the time about just like the timing of that letter leaking and how problematic that was, and how it looked like it was signaling that the players were ready to roll over. And then the fact that they didn't, and that they were able to withstand the public pressure there, but also whenever any information came out, you got to take a step back and say, who's benefiting from this? Who's getting this information out? Who's leaking this? And I think like there was a lot of, I believe, warranted criticism of that letter being leaked. But to Brianna Stewart's case, she was then there for 8 days in a row for those marathon negotiations and had a seat at the table, which goes completely opposite to the idea of there being any kind of fracture. And instead, it seems like there was open communication, and that there was going to be conflict because you were negotiating for potentially the biggest deal that you make for this league, over the next, in the last 30 years. And then who knows how far going forward, because this is now the next step on the next rung on the ladder. But this is just a process, and we can all be kind of the prisoner of the moment in, okay, this is happening now. Let's obscure everything else that we know and let's just hyper focus. And it's because we were kind of only getting those little slivers, which is, I think, mostly a credit to how tight-lipped they were most of the time, that we have very few instances that we can see those cracks and see that separation. But I've got a lot of issue when we're just talking about the media in general. Internal WNBA media, people that have covered this sport, even though we have the old journalism, new journalism, different ways of being creators now, there was a lot of expertise and there were a lot of wide-ranging opinions. And a lot of the times I could say, I don't understand where you're coming from, but I understand that you are coming at this with your best understanding of this space. I was lost, and have continued to be lost, by the people who are outside of the WNBA space, who feel like their opinions should carry weight because they've worked in Major League Baseball, or they've worked in the NBA, or they've worked in the NFL. And I've been hearing a lot of conversation about this that is framing this, like I said earlier, as like who won and who lost. And we're losing so much. And one of the first ever episodes on this podcast, episode 3, and we had Kate Fagan on, who is brilliant. And I remember at the time, I jotted down a quote here, and we're going to play the whole thing on the pod here, just for full context, in case those listeners who are listening now, 70 some odd episodes later, don't remember verbatim exactly what Kate said. But she was looking forward, and this was 3 years ago, saying, does mimicking the men's model's success indicate success? Will women deem success differently once they've reached a level of financial success where they don't have to worry about the issues that they've been worrying about? And that's when we're talking about those really, really what should be givens, right? The quality of life stuff that they had to fight for, or the retirement benefits, or everything that you've alluded to already. And we just frame this sport or sports in general like there's an existing model and that's the only way that we can do things. And it means they lost if the WNBA was willing to go up to 23% and the players like pulled the plug at 20. Like that's not true. There's so much that goes into this, and I feel like when you simplify that conversation, you really do a disservice to these athletes, because that's a problem with your framing. If you think money is the be all and end all, if you think you shouldn't have housing because that's money that you're leaving on the table that could have gone to revenue share, why are you making that distinction? Why are you making that call? It might not be the same dollar amount in 2031 as it is in 2026, but now if I'm a rookie, I shouldn't have to worry if I get drafted to New York City or to Indiana and have to have that different cost of living. That kind of stuff should be secure, and they're not quite at a price point yet where the NBA players are making, every NBA player is making what this full $7 million team salary cap is on an individual scale. And I don't really know that I have a question here, but I just kind of wanted to we have this platform. So just as a kind of rebuke to a lot of the external noise, and there's a lot of talking and there's not a lot of listening going on. And that's just kind of a space. And I feel like, especially when it comes to the WNBA and women's sports, there are a lot of people that don't want to take the time to understand why things are, or look at the larger picture that looks at this space and says, this is why it's so much more difficult for these women to find success. But they instead just want to pop in and critique whenever they can just get a shot off. And that's just been a lasting frustration of mine in this space for a long time, but that really came to a head in these last few months.
I think the growth of the W to me seems inevitable. It's such a no-brainer. It is just an under-harvested area. The question I ask myself is, I don't know if my imagination is strong enough to answer the question of whether like mimicking the men's sports model success indicates success. Like the best I could do in Hoop Muses was imagine a future with, $100 million contract, because we have those in the NBA. But I do think female athletes are different than male athletes in a lot of ways. And so the question, I guess maybe the question might be for year 50 to year 75, which is, will women think hoarding wealth is the best way to deem success in a sports league? Or will they want to be different? Let's say in CBA year 2053, will they say, we need to give a portion of TV proceeds back to youth teams? Like things like, I just think that women's sports does not have to always follow the male sports model. But I think right now we don't know what it could look like, because for years we've just been trying to survive. But that's the question I ask myself, is like, will women deem success different once they have reached a level of success and financial success where they don't have to worry about the issues we've been worrying about?
Absolutely. I mean, you raised
retweet.
excellent points. Yeah. I like
Sorry, I
just
needed
like
to do
your
that.
point about no, it's okay. Well, obviously it's okay. It's your show, but when you made the point about like the union being healthy and having so many people involved in their voices, that was just an excellent point, and it's true. Lexi talked about the difference in engagement now from the past negotiation. And so what you're seeing are the signs of a healthy union. And that's the proper framing, not, oh, they're fractured, And so it's an excellent point. And with respect to the people who want to weigh in, I remember having this conversation before when Brother from Another was still, on air. And, there would be a lot of men specifically from other leagues who would say, oh, the audience over there, or that community, it's like they don't want to hear other people's opinions. And I said, that's not true. I said, I had no problems entering that space and people receiving me, but there was a way to do it. And I said, what happens is that many of you come over from other leagues and you start giving uninformed opinions, and you think because you're an authority in one space that you should be respected as an authority in another space, and they don't care what you did for the NFL or the NBA or somewhere else. Like, you need to demonstrate your interests and expertise over here. And you're not going to be able to do that in a day. Nikias also is someone who entered this space respectfully, and he's well respected over here, you know, and I'm really thankful for people like you both for welcoming me. But I also took the time to do my research and make connections and learn. And I'm still learning because I'm newer to this space. And there's a respect that's not being given. But also I'm like, you know, if I mispronounce a player's name on the NBA side, if there's something I don't know, if there's just any little thing, I don't ever hear the end of it, right? But you all think you can come in, mispronounce players' names, say incorrect things, and then, oh, we're too sensitive, or, you know, like, no, a woman would never have that privilege talking about men's sports. So I don't know why you think you get to have that privilege coming to the women's side. So, you know, do better. I'm expected to do better. You do better. Like, you're not going to get grace from me or understanding.
And then the best part of that cycle is when those men do come into the women's sports space and mispronounce names or say stupid shit, is then we critique it. And then they're like, oh, why are you gatekeeping women's sports? And it's like, no, just do better. Maybe if you actually put in the time and care and effort, then we wouldn't be here. We're not gatekeeping. We welcome all new fans. Just come in good faith. I think it's so cool, your journey into this space, because, you know, people might know this or get an idea just because it's so reflected in your work, but like seeing the behind the scenes, you work so hard and put like so much prep and care into every interview and everything that you do. And you've been on an absolute heater of a run here with guests on the show recently. Diana Taurasi, Jazzy Davidson, Michaela Blakes. What have been some of your favorite parts of recent conversations you've had?
Oh man, they're all so good in different ways, right? Michaela, I think I just love this one quote from her when she talked about teams trying to deny her the ball, and she's like, but you know, the main thing is I just won't be denied. And I love that. Like, I love women talking like that. And I was like, yes, such a badass quote. And that, you know, I really enjoyed.
To be honest, I don't even think. I just sort of let the game come to me. Like, it's not that I'm very focused on, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to shoot it here. It's really just natural. And my teammates find me. And I feel like a lot of teams try to deny me the ball. But the main thing is I just won't be denied. So as long as I have the ball in my hands, I feel like something good is going to happen for the team.
And then with Jazzy, she's so humble. And she's obviously so talented. And, you know, when talking about her freshman campaign, she said, it was okay. All right. And I was like, what? And I was like, just all right? You know, it's like, you had an amazing season. And she's just like, so when I asked her to
with you, yeah.
yeah. And so I asked her to describe it in one word. And I said, it can't be all right or good, you know? And then she said growth. You know, and I did like that. So, I mean, she's so humble. And, you know, I feel like there's this thing that people want athletes to be humble. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but really, like, someone who is of her skill being so humble, it's just always, you know, sort of remarkable to see. And Diana, I mean, everything with her is great, right? Like, you know, she had so many gems, but obviously she was like, rooting, you know, for her Huskies. I thought it was notable that she said that Olivia Myles can also be in consideration for the number one pick. I think mostly you've heard about AZ or maybe Lauren Betts. So that was like an interesting perspective. And while I think most in the media and most brackets are just like UConn to win it all, and obviously that's her pick, you know, she gave a lot of respect to like South Carolina and UCLA and some other teams that could be potential threats. And, it's just like that respect is there. And I thought that was like really, cool to see. And I think one of the most surprising things was her saying that she doesn't miss playing. I expected her to be like, yeah, man, I want to like get back out there. I want to do this because we know the fierce competitor that she was. And she's like, no, I'm at peace. But she's like, I miss them checks. And that's why I was like, run her retirement check.
Yep.
That's fantastic. I want to see I want to see Diana at Unrivaled. I'm like, that would be a good check for her to just pop in and try to see if she could win the one-on-one tournament or something. It'd be good for ratings. I'm also like, with Jazzy Davidson, that is the scariest thing for the rest of Division I to hear. That she was like, oh, this was okay. This was all right. Like, oh, and now Juju's coming back next year, plus the top recruiting class in the country. Scary hours for the rest of Division I.
Did you see how emotional she was? Like after her...
Yeah.
She brought tears to my eyes.
Same. I know. I'm getting older when like March comes around, and it's always like my favorite time of year from a sports perspective and whatever. And now I'm just like, I'm an emotional wreck every single day watching these games. I'm seeing like Raven Johnson check out for the final time, at home, or Flage, all these different players, and bringing tears to my eyes. It's definitely a fun time in a number of ways. Staying on the theme of... Yes, please.
Sorry, can I just share like a really, really quick anecdote?
Yes.
Absolutely.
I appreciate you both saying that. I work really hard, and obviously you're around me so you see, and it's same to you. You guys put in the work. But I think one thing I just want viewers or fans or people to understand is that like whether it comes to voting for awards or like the work that we do, many of us are working really, really hard. And so when we make a mistake, it's not because we hate your favorite. It's not, I guess, just always don't think the worst is what I'm saying. Like yesterday, and I'm, telling on myself, but like yesterday, I did a Sweet 16 preview. I literally had a checklist of the 8 matchups, and, we had a graphic that displayed all the 8 matchups. And then somehow I did the entire preview and completely forgot about UCLA and Minnesota. It could be my ADHD, which I legitimately have, but I just skipped it on the list, And so it was done. It was completed. And I'm like, did we talk about UCLA? And I mean, I felt horrible, right? And I wanted to talk about, my battle from Minnesota. Like I had like notes prepared. We had pictures and B-roll to display, right? And it didn't happen. And so I was like, oh God, I just know someone's going to be in the comments and say something. And of course they did, but I have no bias against those schools. It is not ill intention. We are human people. Sometimes we just make mistakes, but we have the best intentions at heart. And like, we love this league and we're passionate about it and we want to cover it. So just have this little self-reflection a little bit, like when you come at us and come to get us, and think about your own selves. And when you make mistakes, like we're all human. It's never that we want to disparage or do anything ill against these players. We want to grow and help this league and do right by these players. So, it's just one of those things, like people think we have the cool jobs and they think it's easy, but it's not easy. It's really hard work. And just remember, all of us, we are human, and, we do make mistakes.
I'm so glad you said that. We're definitely going to clip that, because I couldn't agree more. And I'm like, I'm guilty of it too. It's, I think, like a manifestation of the way in which we talk about sports on the internet and debate culture and stan culture and all these things, that I think it does get lost. Like, we are in it because we love the players and we care about the players and we care about this game. And so, yeah, there's going to be stuff that slips through the cracks sometimes. And that's part of the game. What's something that you're most proud of that you've done or accomplished since you've entered this space? Because there's so much to choose from, but whether it's an interview or, a piece, anything, just a moment that makes you proud of being in this space.
Oh man, I feel like the answer should be winning 2 Emmys, because I feel like people hear that and they're always like, oh my gosh. And it's not that I'm not amazed by it. It's like surreal to me, but
they should be in the shot behind you at all times. Bring them with you everywhere you go.
I'm gonna be honest with you, like they're still in the boxes. I haven't even figured out like where to put them. And one of them came at a time like I was like away. I didn't even know it was coming in. So and I at first it was like too heavy for me to even lift. So I have to figure it out. I don't know where to put them, but for sure, you know, I would say like before you even get to the idea of like I won an award, which was for like the work that I did during the Paris Olympics. When the Olympics were over, when it was done, there was definitely a feeling of like, wow, I did that. You know, like I was a part of covering this major sports event because you work like it's 12-hour shifts at minimum. NBC brings everyone over. Like if you are not in the area, they make everyone stay at hotels near Stamford, Connecticut, which is where NBC Sports is headquartered. And most of the production happens there. Like there's actually a very small percentage of people who like go to Paris or go to, now that may change for like LA because it's domestic, but in general, a lot of the magic that you see is happening like back in Stamford and Connecticut. And so when it's done, I could barely keep my eyes open, but also it's just like definitely a feeling of, wow, you know, like this is pretty remarkable. But I'd say the other thing that I'm just really proud of is the coverage that I do for women, you know, and not even just the coverage, but even some of the stuff that I do behind the scenes. I mean, I everything about my career, even when I was a lawyer and now here in sports, has been untraditional. And I got a lot of responsibility when I went to NBC that I didn't know that I would have, but also I don't think that they realized like they were getting in me. It was sort of like once they saw what I could do, they trusted me and sort of like, you know, I made my own role. NBC didn't hire me to cover women's sports. They hired me to produce a show that's not even there. And now it's like, go ahead. You want to cover women's sports? Go ahead and cover women's sports. And even when I did produce for Brother from Another, I had a lot of authority in terms of the guests that we brought on and the topics that we covered. And so it allowed me to bring in more women to be on the show and to help people get opportunities with NBC, to see more Black women. That's important to me, you know? And so I always view myself as someone who's here to help other women. And so like, to me, that's really my space here. Like, I don't desire to be like the queen of NBC. I don't really want to, like, that's not me. I don't want to like have a show on broadcast every day a week, but I do want to tell and share the stories of women, and I want to help other women. And so that's true to me at my core. And so I'm proud of stuff like that, and just proud of like where I've come. Because there was a time, like, if you asked me to call myself like a creative, I would have never said that, because I'm just like, oh, I don't know, you know. And now I look at like these videos I edit or things that I do, and I'm just like, I can't believe I did this. You know, it's still like, honestly, if you knew who I was before, it's just like, wow, you know, honestly, I can't believe that I've done as much as I've done.
Absolutely. And we're really grateful to have you. And you are always so wonderful about just being present and being, honestly, you've said it even on this pod that you're thankful for being welcome into this space. And then in turn, in kind, you do that with other people. And I think that when people are just, you know, staring at a screen and complaining about power rankings or something like that, they don't understand just the hours, yes, but the way that you lead your whole life in this space with compassion and with care. And that's not just, that doesn't end with the players, that extends to us in media as well. And we're really grateful to have you in this space and to have you as a friend. And I'm gonna veer us off for our last question. Let's just have some fun and stop getting sappy here.
Yeah, because my eyes are tearing up.
We're getting a season. We're getting a season. Finally, we can say that. Knock on wood, because something can go wrong still, always. It feels like that's always in play. But 2026 WNBA season, let's just go around the horn. One wild prediction for what you think. And Nat, I'll start with you.
I hope I don't like let you down with my prediction, but my prediction is that I don't really think we're going to have this free agency frenzy that people are expecting. And I've sort of said this for a while now, but I feel like at this point it is kind of a hot take because every time I see people talking about it, they're like, "Oh boy, if you thought last year there's a lot of movement," and I'm like, I don't think there's going to be that much movement. And let me be clear,
we're gonna have a week to make this decision.
yeah,
Like how much whining and dining can be happening in that time?
but also like so I don't think it's going to be the top stars. Like if you see movement, I think it's going to be among the middle because if you just go by each franchise and look at the stars, and again, there can always be things I don't know. Who's leaving? I mean, Asia is happy in Vegas. I don't see her leaving. In Phoenix, like they got to the finals. Like that trio still has things to work out, but they all seemed really happy. They love their coach. Phoenix has facilities, like Valkyries, oh, they want Asia Wilson. They're gonna go after Sabrina. That's nice, and I would love to like steal Michael Ealy from his wife, but you know what? Like it's probably not gonna happen, you know what I mean? Like, so Sabrina and Stewie are happy in New York. The girls seem happy over in Seattle. There wasn't anything that I was hearing that much behind the scenes that suggests like these players want to leave where they are. And then the players who we do know who may not be happy where they are, like Chicago, they are on rookie scale contracts. And if they did want to leave, can't right now. So I don't know where the movement is coming from now. And now all the teams have money to pay. So I mean, like, yeah, there are distinctions like market or like facilities for sure, but I just don't see it. Even in Atlanta, like Rye and Leash, they seem really happy there, yeah. and BG. So I don't know where the movement's gonna be. So that's my prediction.
I like that. I totally agree with you. My prediction. I'm gonna be Debbie Downer for a second here because last year famously, I came out in the preseason and I said the Golden State Valkyries do not know what they're doing. They cut Letitia Me here. This team's going to be a disaster. If they win 10 games, they'll be lucky. That went brilliantly. So I'm doubling down, and I'm going to say that the Portland Fire and the Toronto Tempo combined are not going to win the number of games that the Valkyries won last year. And to just build this out a little bit, because it's not, just me being a complete hater here, I think that it's incredibly daunting and difficult what is about to be asked of these two expansion teams. There's how many days do we have until opening day until the season starts? It's like, what, 50, if that? Yeah. They don't even have a team. They don't even have a roster. I mean, they have to go through a full expansion draft, get a full roster, get all these players in here. They'll have like 2.5 weeks to figure out how that looks. It's going to be absolute madness. So this is less about the infrastructure of what's being built in Portland and Toronto, which I actually think in both cases really impressive. I think long term those franchises are going to be very successful. I really like what I'm hearing from internally, what both organizations have done, but I just think it's a massive ask. And I also think, to the point about me being so wrong last year about Golden State, like that was unbelievably impressive what they did. Shout out to Veronica Burton, who was on our podcast a month or two ago. Like,
nice plug.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it because I rock with VV. Like that team just did something that was really, really special last year, and I don't think it can be duplicated this year for a number of reasons.
Love that. I love that. I've got two that are maybe lukewarm, so maybe that combines into one hot take. My first one, though, is that the Atlanta Dream take that next step. And I have them, I'm not going as far as to saying I've got them winning the title, but I've got them in the finals. I've got them with this core that really plays well together and really responded well to Smesko's system. I think that they now can reapproach this next free agency and say, we've showed that we've got a fun system to play in, and we've showed that we can work with players to maximize their skill sets. And we're just playing this run and gun kind of offense that you dream of, and that it worked at a large scale at this level in terms of with the pace and the transition. I don't see a lot of pros that wouldn't want to be a part of that. And you already have a core in place. So I think that's the kind of scenario where you can bring in one more piece and that could bring you to that next level. And I'm really excited about that team. And then there's a lot of talk for that number one pick between AZ Fudd and Awa Pham. I feel like those are the two names that we're hearing the most. And the reason is because if you have Paige Beckers, you probably don't need an Olivia Myles. And that's, I think, shifted the conversation. And like you alluded to DT saying they could play alongside each other, and that's true. I don't necessarily see that as good of a fit, because you can just, instead of having two players that have a lot of overlapping skill sets, why not bring in one of these complementary pieces? That just makes more sense for a roster building standpoint. But I think that it shifted the conversation away from how good Olivia Myles is. And that's going to be my take, is that she's going to be the runaway rookie of the year this year. So she won't be the number one pick because they don't need that in Dallas. But whether she lands in Minnesota or Seattle, they're handing her the keys. And she's already just such a great downhill driver. And I really love her way of negotiating tight windows when she's on the move and finding those little pocket passes. And if you put that next to Nafisa Collier, or if you put that next to Nneka Ogwumike, or like Ezi Magbegor or Dominique Malanga, and those are bigs that are like, oh, I'm going to be involved in every action, and then help defenders know that they can't come off those assignments whenever Olivia gets downhill. And her shooting, we've seen growth throughout her college career. She's pro ready right now, and the landing spots look pretty good for two teams that are already really talented to start with. So now you're going to also get rid of that narrative of she's not winning any games. How can she be the rookie of the year? If she's in Minnesota or Seattle, she's going to be winning a lot of games. And with that responsibility and with that veteran core, Olivia Myles, runaway rookie of the year for me.
Oh my gosh, you said so many things there. Can I just ask a few follow-up questions? Is that okay?
No, absolutely not.
Me too.
These takes are so perfectly solid. There are no leaks, no cracks anywhere.
Well, no, I love the Olivia Myles for Rookie of the Year, but I gotta tell you, I do not love her. I don't love any of the destinations for. Well, I don't love Minnesota or Seattle, not because they aren't good teams. You know my position. I don't love top player like top draft picks coming off the bench. I think that they need to play. And I mean, Seattle has a point guard, and unless, Sky's going somewhere, and I don't know if Courtney stays.
I think they could share that backcourt. I think they can.
Okay. I mean, I don't know. And I don't know if they're going to how they would handle the point guard in Minnesota. I also don't know if Courtney's going to still be there. So I just want to make sure she's getting on teams that, maybe I'm traumatized as a Warriors fan, but on teams that are ready to win, they don't often utilize players that need development. And while I do think Olivia's pro ready, I don't know if she's as pro ready as a Paige. Her defense certainly is something she has to work on, and especially on those two teams, they care about defense. So I have a little concerns there, but I do like that as the pick. I guess I wonder where you guys feel like Lauren Betts is, because there was a point coming into the season she was viewed as the number one pick, and now people are talking about everyone but her.
It is pretty remarkable how that's happened. And UCLA has been dominant this year. We talked about it a month ago or so, maybe more recently, just
Lucas on the podcast.
Yeah, we had our friend Lucas Kaplan on the podcast, talked about them a little bit there. And then on our Step Back episodes, just about how UCLA has gone totally under the radar, doing everything that it is supposed to do this season. And I think you're so right. Lauren Betts has, from everyone I've talked to, had a phenomenal season and seems to be answering every question that people came into the season with about potential weak spots in her game that might give her problems at the next level. She's answered those questions pretty definitively. I think it's a testament to the strength of the top three, Pham, Fudd, and Myles, that Lauren hasn't been able to crack back into that top three from mock draft perspectives. Because to me, we should be first take instead of pull up with Myles and Owen, because I couldn't disagree more with both of Myles' predictions. Wow. I think AZ Fudd is my lock for rookie of the year and number one overall pick. And
all right, I didn't pick apart your prediction. All right.
Yeah, because it was because there were no holes. All right, there were no holes in it. And the Atlanta, we'd have to do a whole nother podcast on the Atlanta Dream. Given we'd have to invite B. Terrell on because somewhere he's toasting the fact that you just
bring me an ally.
B would be a fan. I don't see that one personally. I'm gonna be kind with that and just say that's a real long shot. But yeah, I don't know. Many thoughts. Do you have any closing thoughts on any of these things, Natalie?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not convinced Lauren Betts is going to fall out of the top 3. I still think it's wild that people are discounting her, but we'll see. I think my only other thing was, if AZ is going to Dallas, what does that mean for Arike?
It's a great question. I think, to your point earlier, the one name that makes so much sense to me from a star perspective, changing locations, would be Arike. Like, I completely agree that I don't think we're getting any of the big names, leaving these teams that are really established. Maybe I could see a shakeup in Seattle just because the vibes have been off there for a number of years. But, like, they have great facilities, and I do think the players that are still there are happy. I think you're totally right. Like, I don't think Arike fits into the vision of what Kurt Miller has for the Wings going forward. And if you take AZ and your backcourt is Paige and AZ, and maybe you try to get a big, like, Arike doesn't really fit into that ethos.
Right.
The timeline, exactly. So I don't know. That would be a player who I'd love to see get a change of scenery, just because she's one of my faves. As a 2018 Notre Dame stan, we love Arike. Also, 2026 unrivaled champion. All right, I'm going overtime. I could talk for hours.
No, I think that this is what happens whenever we have friends come onto the podcast.
Yes.
We hit like the 30-minute mark, and then it's almost like we're back beer in hand at McMahon's. Like, that's kind of where our minds go, and then all of a sudden we're just talking hoop. I think we should wrap it here. We should wrap it here. Natalie, you are just such a light in this space, and we're so happy to have you be now not just a friend in real life, but a friend of the pod, which we hold in very high esteem. Thank you so much. Is there anything you would like to plug on the way out? We'll make sure to tag your socials and everything, but that you want to let people know.
Yeah, I mean, I just follow me, I guess, on at Natfluential. That's my handle on all platforms, and subscribe to the WNBA on NBC. That's our new YouTube channel. We're trying to grow it, and I'm not gonna say support women's sports, but you should, because hey, the WNBA is where it's at, and if you're not watching, you're really missing out. So go ahead and subscribe to that channel. And thank you so much, you both, for having me. I feel so honored to be on. Thank you.
Thank you. And shout out to anyone who doesn't watch women's sports but has made it to minute 51 of this podcast. You are a real one. And now we've definitely got a fan for life.
That's it for this episode. Thank you all so much for listening to Pull Up with Myles and Owen. We are so grateful for every time y'all download, like, subscribe to our YouTube channel or to our show on all the various podcast platforms. And if you want even more from us, please subscribe to our Patreon page, Step Back with Myles and Owen, for some very exciting bonus content. We got uncut interviews with players, in-depth analysis of everything women's basketball. Go check it out.
You can follow Pull Up with Myles and Owen and leave a rating and a review for us on your podcast player of choice, and follow the podcast on Instagram at Pull Up with Myles and Owen, and subscribe to our channel on YouTube, which Owen just mentioned, at Pull Up with Myles and Owen. And you can follow me on Twitter at Myles Ehrlich.
You can follow me on Twitter at Owen Pence. We will see you next week.
Pull Up with Myles and Owen is hosted by Myles Ehrlich and Owen Pence. This episode was written and produced by Myles Ehrlich, Owen Pence, Molly Socha, and Kevin Kdot Lewis. Molly Socha is our executive producer.